And we're live. Welcome to Talking Tuesdays. I'm Jean Schumacher. I am the starch queen of diamonds, and my partner, Nancy Matthews, is the starch queen of hearts. And together, we are the starch queens. And our lifestyle and weight loss program is online. This is where we provide coaching. This is where we provide recipes, educational program. It helps everybody to lose weight and heal. And we teach about what we call the trifecta approach. The trifecta approach is where you have to change what goes in, so that's the food and drink. You have to change what goes on, that's the personal care products, that's the environmental toxins you're being exposed to, and then you have to exercise. You can't get around that. Just got to do that. So you can find our program at www.sqweightloss.com and check out our resources at starchqueens.net. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, Starch Queens. Tonight's topic is fasting, and we have a special guest back again, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and he runs the Balance for Life program in Deerfield Beach, Florida, which is behind me tonight. And this is the sunset view at Deerfield Beach. This retreat is a lifestyle education center specializing in plant-based vegan nutrition, health rejuvenation, stress management. Oh God, we need that in this day and age. Therapeutic fasting, and detoxification. That we really need. And Dr. Sabatino is a chiropractic physician who also has a Ph.D. in cellular biology and neuroendocrinology. And while at the University of Texas School of Medicine, he did extensive research on calorie restriction, stress, and aging, and has published numerous papers on the fields of cell biology, endocrinology, and neuroscience. So thank you again, Dr. Sabatino, for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be on the show with you guys.
It's always so much fun. Tell us about, we got your Balance for Life program. Tell us about that, because this is amazing.
It's a special, residential center where people come and stay for a period of time, usually within a period of 5-7 days and longer. And when they check in, they get inundated with an incredible educational program. I lecture every day. We have other people that speak. There are fitness programs, and it's based on a really whole food, plant-based approach, mostly organic food. And we also have detoxification programs, including juice and water fasting. And we really get into stress management too, with yoga, tai chi. So we have a very, integrated, holistic approach that helps people step back from the chatter of their lives.
And you've got January 5th through the 9th coming up, a program with the National Health Association. So tell us about that.
Yeah, we're so pleased. We're being sponsored by the NHA, which is, of course, one of my favorite groups across all time. They've been one of the oldest groups on the planet fostering and promoting this lifestyle for the past 70 years. But what we're doing is we're moving Balance for Life not only into our personal health retreat, but really setting it up as a focus, a place where people that teach plant-based living or influencers in this movement can actually bring their own groups and know that they have a center that's based on that kind of nutrition and lifestyle. And so this particular one is our inaugural one. It's the first one for the new year. It's going to give people a chance to jumpstart their new health program for the new year. There's some incredible speakers by my invitation: Dr. Alan Goldhammer, Dr. Stefan Esser, Victoria Moran from New York. And we're going to have our full program, but with the added dimension of having these speakers and educators really provide their insight. And we'll have the fellowship of about, 80 to 100 people living together, working together, learning together, and just enjoying this incredible beachfront property. So having a wonderful vacation while maintaining this plant-based educational experience. And I'm excited. It's going to be amazing. It's less than 3 weeks away. We've kept it so incredibly affordable. We still have spaces if people are still contemplating the idea of coming. And I urge you to come and play with us. It's going to be remarkable.
Well, look at the beach. I mean, my gosh, I can't wait. It's because Nancy and I are coming down in March. And can't wait for this, truly, just to be on the beach. And what a great way to start the new year. I mean, seriously. I can't think of a better way, because we always have those, it's the New Year's resolution, and we got to change, we got to lose the weight we just gained all over the holiday season. So what a good way to start the year.
Yeah, also, it's funny. I've fasted people, for example, in many places over the past 40 years. This is one of the easiest places I have found to fast people because something about having that ocean environment and even the oceanfront rooms of the hotel with the windows fling open and you're getting that air and the sun rises right in your face. And with fasting, many times you're spending more quiet time, private time, sometimes in your room. So having that availability of that ocean front really makes the fasting experience a lot easier and a lot more beautiful, really.
I think that
Gosh,
anything on the beach works.
I know, right?
I'm an ocean baby. Put me by the water. That's why I'm where I am. I love being by the sea. It's just where it's at for me.
Yeah, me too. I love the ocean. Well, shall we dive right into the questions, Dr. Sabatino? We've got a nice
Yes,
lineup of
please. Let's
questions.
take care of let's help our viewers with their questions.
Yes, we do. And we have a great audience that's building so far. We actually have joining us tonight, we have Wanda Fowler. She's joining us, or Wanda Huberman is with us. And we've got members from our Starch Queens program. And we've got a nice audience. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. So our first question, Dr. Sabatino, is a good one. This is from Melissa Croft, and she's asking, is water fasting safe while breastfeeding? My boys are 4.5 years old and 14 months, so they nurse but not exclusively anymore. Will there be too heavy a contamination burden? I remember reading a Nutrifax article on heavy metals and breast milk. That being said, I'm losing weight and have been since giving birth, so maybe the risk is the same?
What happens, you have to understand that in fasting, because you're utilizing your fat reserves as a source of energy, a lot of the toxicity that we're exposed to in the environment, for example, industrial waste, the byproducts of fossil fuels, pesticides, many of these chemicals are very fat soluble. So they will be stored in the fat tissue of the body as the body tries to protect itself against circulating these around the bloodstream. So when you're breaking down fat and you're starting to kind of, in a sense, dump some of this chemistry into your bloodstream in a way to eliminate it, there could be the possibility that some of these things could make their way into some of the breast milk, then potentially affect the nursing child. I don't really see the point unless there's for a breastfeeding mother to fast, no more than maybe just a couple of days if she needed a little break in the action. Because what also happens is when you're nursing, you want to take in a kind of a full gamut of healthy nutrition to actually help in the production of that milk and improve the quality of that milk. I think just eating plant-based and doing this way of eating and living will provide the tremendous benefit to that mother without having to go the next step of trying to promote some more, intense form of detoxification. But as far as it being safe, it is safe for breastfeeding mothers. I've fasted breastfeeding mothers, but I haven't done it for long periods of time. And again, I don't want to take the risk that the milk will not be as competent, will not be as nutrition rich for that baby. And so I think just making sure you're eating a really healthy diet, that it's whole food, plant-based, and then letting the body detoxify in the normal ways that it does during the eating phase to some degree, I think is a much better way to approach it. Bottom line, it's safe. It's with the caveat that certain things can be released from fat that may make their way into breast milk to some degree. And again, I don't see the point unless there was some major reason for a nursing mother to actually go into a fasting process.
Well, what can you remember back when you did a fasting with a breastfeeding mom? What was the reason she wanted to fast?
There could have been some energetics that were there. Sometimes with nursing, there can even be a little inflammation of the breast, some mastitis that can sometimes occur. And sometimes when you have a little inflammatory process or something like that, there may be some value. But the key that you have to remember, the real stimulus for producing milk in a nursing mother is that the baby keeps sucking. So the bottom line is, once that baby stops, there's a much better chance that that milk will dry up, or that source will dry up. So, the key is the mother going to be able to continue to have the baby nurse to have the milk letdown that will happen in nursing. And I've done it when there has been some inflammation or there's been some compromise where the woman just didn't feel well and needed to kind of promote a little recovery for a short few days. But I've never done it more than, a few days of fasting during that time. And so that's just my approach. Someone else may approach it differently. I think that's such a dynamic time when women are nursing babies that they really should be fed at that time and fed the best diet possible. So you're producing the highest quality milk for that nursing baby.
I'm going to just jump in real quick and just say, please share, because if you can share in your timeline, if you can share in groups, please, we want to get more people involved in this because it's a great conversation, especially fasting. It could truly help save your life. And, if you need to do fasting, you can go down to Frank Sabatino's place in Deerfield Beach. So please share this and help get the message out. So we have another question.
So Susan Davis asks, when is it better to fast or juice?
Well, the big consideration for those things is, first of all, juicing is kind of promotes a detoxification process, but it doesn't promote the autophagy and some of the things to the extent that water fasting does. Because when you're juicing, you're still taking in a carbohydrate source. And so what happens is the body is able to use that carbohydrate source to promote normal course of nutrition. You're raising blood sugar, you're getting insulin release, you're getting all the things that happen as if you're eating normally, except that you're eating in a shortened way, which is juicing rather than all the nutrients of regular eating. In water fasting, now you have no carbohydrate coming in. You have no fat coming in. You have no protein coming in. So the body has to now deal with that dilemma of having to provide energy needs for the system while not having any nutrients coming in. So it starts to go into your fat reserves by the second and third day, and you start generating a ketotic state where you're breaking down fat, you're producing ketones that the body will use as an energy source, the body and brain. And when you're juicing, you don't get the same state to the same extent. You will get some of it, but the bottom line is you don't get the autophagy, you don't get the detoxification intensity that you get with fasting. But the other side of that coin is, when you're fasting, we recommend that it be done under absolutely resting conditions. When you're juicing, because you still have some nutrient coming in, you can create and maintain some moderate level of activity. So if you tell me that, look, I want to get a detoxification experience, but I want to participate in your activity program, or I have to work, I have to take care of my family, I say, well, you can't water fast. So the way you're going to use your energy will dictate whether you can do a modified eating program, which is what juicing is, or whether you can do a really intense, strictly fasting approach, which is what water-only fasting is. They are two different processes. They create detoxification effects, but fasting is unique in that you have to now lean on body reserves in a way that you don't when you're juicing. So one is really a modified eating phase, and one is a true fasting state.
So saying a juice fast is almost a misnomer.
Yeah, it's kind of a misnomer in a way. It's like when people say intermittent fast or when they say juice fast. These are basically calorie restricted eating programs.
Right.
But you're getting an effect, because if you think about it, if you're eating in a very concentrated way and so much of that energy is bound up in the digestion and the use of that food, you're not going to quite have as much available for the detoxification intensity. If I ratchet that down by making it a more liquefied diet, which is juices, there will be more energy available for detoxification. So there are steps to that process, or steps to those different ways of taking in nutrients that will promote detoxification effects. But fasting is so incredibly unique because now you have nothing coming in, and the body has to truly go into your reserve tissues as a way to nurture and feed that system. And in the process, there are a whole series of chemical changes at a cellular level with messengers inside the cells that shift the body away from normal growth into maintenance and repair. And it only really does that when growth factors like insulin-like growth factor or insulin itself are absolutely lower, because now you're not getting the building blocks of carbohydrates like glucose and amino acids entering the cells. So those cells have to survive. So they start recycling the organelles that are in a cell in the process of autophagy, and they're leaning on fat reserves. It's a really unique and profound process. It's truly a magical mystery tour on a cellular level, but it's an amazing process of change. You don't see it the same way with juicing. It's just not the same.
So really quickly, how many hours would a person have to fast to then launch and start autophagy?
Well, you got to understand that when you are starting a fast, you have reserves in your liver and muscle cells of glucose, which is in the form of glycogen, for about 12 to 24 hours. So if you decide to fast longer than a day on water only, you're now going to use up that reserve that's been maintained, let's say, in your liver and muscle cells. Let's talk about the liver. So now your blood sugar begins to drop because you've used up the sugar reserve, so it can't be replenished by the liver. So now the body starts looking for other vehicles or other ways to create energy. And it starts taking pieces of protein and fat, the glycerol portion of fat, some of the amino acids of protein, and it starts creating a new form of energy or a new form of sugar in the process of gluconeogenesis. Glucose is glucose, neo is new, and Genesis is like the first book of the Bible. You're creating a new form of sugar. And so what happens is by the second to third day, the body starts protecting the protein itself, because in the early days, you're going to have more of a protein loss, but then that tapers off as it starts to shift primarily into fat reserve and takes the fatty acids from fat, the building blocks, starts breaking them down as an energy source. And in the process of breaking them down, it creates these ketone bodies, ketosis, and those ketones become a primary energy source pretty much from that point on, from about the third day during the duration of the fast. So once you get into that third day and you're starting to really lean on that fat reserve, you're going to start promoting some of the autophagic process that goes on. And all autophagy means, it's short for the word autophagocytosis. What it means is the cells, all cells, have kind of debris in them. They have old organelles that have been kind of gone through a wear and tear process in the normal cellular action of the body. What's intriguing about autophagy is that it can start to package those worn out parts, transport it to something inside your cell called a lysosome. And in the lysosome, it will break down that debris, take from it the most healthy parts of that, the building blocks of protein and fat, spit those out, and now from that debris and damaged parts of cells, you have raw material to produce the most dynamic cells and outcome in the human body. It's as if you had broken wood that somehow all of a sudden was turned into a marble home. Wow. It's the most remarkable, magic, mysterious process that you can imagine. So this lysosomal transformation of debris and damaged parts of cells into new healthy cells and tissues to provide for the survival of the body is the process of autophagy. Awesome. And it was such a magical and important process that the man who spent a lot of time, a Japanese researcher, got the Nobel Prize for looking at the impact of autophagy in yeast. And so that's really something that we see. So the bottom line is this typically occurs primarily and only in the fasting state to a great extent. Remember, the body's doing autophagy all the time. This is nothing new to fasting. But because you now have so much energy available, because you're not spending it procuring food, digesting food, and because nutrients are not normal carbohydrates and normal amino acid building blocks of protein are not making their way into the cells, you have a drop in the production of insulin because you don't need it, and you don't have the insulin-like growth factors. They drop too, insulin-like growth factor and other growth factors. So now they're not attaching to cells and triggering the growth phase of a cell. So the cell perceives that, and recognizes that it's not any longer in a growth phase, and it diverts its attention in the direction of maintenance and repair away from growth. And that whole process is driven in the fasting state.
Amazing.
What's going on at the chromosomal level?
Well, that's an interesting piece. There's not a lot of evidence in my experience, and I think there's more research that's being done to look at the genetic patterning that's going on. What we do know, and I don't want to get too crazy for the listeners, but what happens is when something like insulin attaches to a cell, to the receptors on a cell, that usually allows the membrane of the cell to open up. And when the membrane of a cell opens up, the sugar that's in your blood, the amino acids that are in your blood that came from the carbohydrates and proteins that you ate, can now enter those cells. When they enter, there's a series of what are called second messengers in the cell, very sophisticated chemicals that are involved in the energy exchanges of the cell. They trigger a set of pathways that will actually turn on and turn off genes that feed the survival mechanism of the cells. So at a very deep level, you're getting genetic things turned on and turned off in that process of second messenger instruction to the cell, whether it's in a survival mode or in a normal growth mode. And different genes are turned on and different pathways are turned on and off based on whether there's enough nutrients to support cellular growth or whether there's a deficiency of those nutrients, so that the cell has to now find a different way to survive. And it will survive by triggering genetically the autophagic process, any proteins and components that are part of that autophagic gene expression, so to speak, that will now allow the cell to move into maintenance and repair. It's profound. I mean, it's just profound. If you like cell biology, that's something to study, because it will blow your mind. It will blow your mind.
So,
go ahead.
I was going to say, Dr. Sabatino, have you heard of the acronym or the term OMAD?
No. What does it mean?
So that means 1 meal a day.
Oh, okay.
So Sherry Stewart, one of our viewers, is asking, could you share with us what your thoughts are and maybe opinion on the 1 meal a day concept with fasting, nutrition?
Okay. We human beings love ritual. We love to get into things that, a little bit offbeat. The fact of the matter is we're really designed to eat when we have signals that we're hungry. So that may be 1 time a day, that may be 5 times a day. I don't know. The bottom line is we have been disconnected from those natural rhythms because we eat according to the clock. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, that's breakfast time. It's 12, it's lunchtime. It's 6, it's dinner time. And the truth is, at that time, you may not be hungry. So really the better approach is to be more attentive to your natural needs, because there's hormones being released in the body that will give you the signals to start eating. There's hormones that will give you the signals to stop eating. So you can entrain yourself, and that's what people do in intermittent fast. For example, they may decide that they're only going to eat within a window of a certain number of hours in a day. So that may be 4 hours in a day, so they'll go on a 24 cycle. 20 hours they're not eating, 4 they are, or they may do 12-12. I don't think it's imperative to stay and focus on just 1 meal a day. If you're a very active person and you're a child and you're younger, you may need to eat more frequently. You may need more caloric density throughout the day than you can get at 1 meal. Some people don't eat a lot at any 1 meal. They may need to take in more at another time. So I don't like to make rules about how many meals a day to eat. I would rather we got all of us a little bit more in touch with the natural drives and communication that the body is making. And at a certain meal, if you're not hungry at that time, that may be a time to miss a meal. I don't necessarily do much fasting anymore unless I'm really run down or I don't feel well or whatever. But the bottom line is I try to be a little more attentive to whether I'm hungry or not, and I will build my eating activity around that. I will say this, though, that the normal cycle, the diurnal cycle for human beings, is that evening time is truly a time for winding down. I will say that the smallest amount of any food, if eating at all, should ever be done in the nighttime dark hours, and that your eating pattern should be higher earlier in the day. Digestive fires are probably burning the best midday on a 24-hour clock for most human beings. So the midday meal might be the one that should be the most elaborate. But the fact of the matter is, if you do a little bit of an intermittent fast, have an early dinner, wait about 12 hours at least, and you know you're going to have breakfast, get into good whole food plant-based eating. The beauty of whole food plant-based eating is it's so low in calorie density and so high in nutrient density that it's about eating well, not less. And so we have this mentality, we still come from this deprivational model. I'm going to eat less, I'm going to eat one meal, I'm going to eat a little meal, the one meal I eat, So we keep coming to that point when that's not what this way of living is about. It's about eating well, not less. And the fact is, when you're working and you're moving, you may need to consume more than one meal. I would just try to get my eating within the daytime hours and not in the nighttime hours when we should be preparing for sleep. And we also find that the more calories you consume later in the day and into the evening will promote more weight gain, even if the calorie count is the same throughout the day. So there's a diurnal pattern to how we even process things, a circadian rhythm that makes us more effective in how we use calories or not. But this is one of the beauties for me. I grew up in an Italian household. I love to eat. And the idea that I can eat volumes of plant-based foods and not worry about weight and some of these issues because it's about eating well, not less, I think that's emancipating. I think that's freeing. And I think we have too much of a focus on restriction and deprivation. And that kind of sets up a different kind of mindset that I think sets people back a little bit in their normal activities of living, the normal way that they live and think about things. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's perfect. It's a great response. And I just think it's very empowering that we want to eat high quality, high nutrient foods, and they just come in at a lower caloric density, and that's a win-win.
If the question is, can we do that? The short answer is yes. I told Jeannie in one of the last fasting talk we had, I had a friend that was a doctor in Coney Island area of Brooklyn in New York, and he was a bit of a mentor. He was older, they knew him. He was a little bit offbeat. But one year, this is the truth, he decided to eat every other day. So that year, he only ate 6 months. If you think about how bizarre that actually is, it shows you how little the dependency on food really needs to be, because he maintained his energy, he maintained life and health, even his weight. He didn't lose a lot of weight. He regulated his weight quite effectively that way. But when you think about it, how bizarre is that? He only ate 6 months that year. And when you think about the fact that we live in a culture that is so preoccupied, I mean, when you're having breakfast, you're worried about what's for lunch. You're having lunch, you're worried about what's for dinner. So we go through this whole thing that is so bizarre about food. What I like about this lifestyle is it emancipates you from that. When it's time to eat, I'm going to eat with gusto. I'm going to eat till I'm full. I'm going to enjoy what I'm eating, and I'm going to move on and get on with the rest of my life. So much of our lives become so preoccupied. And that's one of the things that fasting will do, because when you fast, you get really hit with the idea of how you break that dependency on an emotional level, even with food, because now I'm taking it away. And you realize that you don't need it quite the way you thought you needed it. And so it kind of breaks that pattern a little bit in your mind. It's very emancipating.
But I just want to go back to your comment about eating at night and going back to saying that you should be eating most of the food in the afternoons, because I know, like, if I eat late at night, like I've gone out or I'll come home and I'm just really tired. I, didn't get a chance to eat, during the day. And I know, like, if I eat late at night, I can feel like as soon as I lay down, it's almost like it comes back up as like bile. And, it's almost like, oh my God, I need some antacid, because I can just feel this bile coming up. And I know if I don't eat that, I don't get that. I mean, it's hello.
Well, when people come to our center, we serve dinner between 5:30 and 6:30, let's say. Breakfast then is served at 8:15. So that's almost 14 hours. And I think at first that's a little shocking to people, because if you think about how much nighttime eating goes on, that's such a habit for so many of us, right?
It is.
So once they get into that pattern, they realize how they wake up with better energy. They have better metabolic effects. Weight loss is better, less craving, less reflux, as you mentioned. And so many things are better when you respect the idea that nighttime is a time for winding down. It's for preparing for sleep. It's for letting the stress of the day go at night. And it's not meant to be consuming huge amounts of food. Now, if you are going to eat something at night, my best recommendation is to have simple, fresh fruit. It'll be the easiest to handle at that time. And there are some people who can have blood sugar that drops during their sleep phase, and that may actually create a level of insomnia. So for those people, having a little bit of fresh fruit or that kind of food in the evening hours may be beneficial. We also know that, and this is something that Richard Wertman, who was an endocrinologist at MIT, talked about years ago, that when you have something like fruit, there's a little bit of an insulin release that will occur. And insulin doesn't only drive sugar into cells, it drives the amino acid, the building blocks of protein, into cells. One of those proteins, one of those amino acids is something called L-tryptophan, which the body uses to produce serotonin, which is a transmitter of sleep. So there's some people that will have the proteins from the food they ate in the day produce the transmitter of sleep more effectively during the sleep phase, having a little something sweet at night if they need to do that. But as a rule, I would recommend not eating in the nighttime hours.
That's great information. Yeah, that's really good information. So we'll have another question. This is from Pat Runner. She is she's in our Starch Queens program. Pat recently had knee surgery. She had a torn meniscus, but she was still having knee pain post-surgery, post-physical therapy. Had an x-ray today and found that there's arthritis in the knee. And so this was pretty upsetting to Pat because she thought that the surgery was going to be, corrective restoration, and Pat likes to run, hence, and her last name is Runner, and she loves to run. So she's asking, what can she do to reduce the inflammation in obviously her body, and can fasting and nutrition improvement, elimination of sugar, help with arthritic pain?
Oh, there's no question. It's what's important to realize that arthritis just means inflammation of a joint. But
Right.
The panorama of that inflammation could mean many things. It can just be the beginning of some of the cytokines being released that are involved in inflammation around the joint. It could be a very early stage of inflammatory irritation in the joint, all the way up to the place where you now lose the entire joint space and you got bone rubbing on bone. If you got bone rubbing on bone, there's not a whole heck of a lot you're going to be able to do other than some form of replacement down the road. But generally speaking, most of that pain is happening when there's still viable joint space, and it's just from irritation, trauma, any of the things that may have occurred with her workout, and even post-surgery. There could have been, surgery itself can be somewhat traumatic, so there could be an inflammatory part of that that's part of that. But the bottom line is, what we do know is that when you're eating in a plant-based manner without salt, oil, and sugar, it is about as anti-inflammatory an eating plan as there is. And that's why you have a lot of professional athletes now going to this way of eating, because they find that in their normal performance, they have much less pain and their recovery time is much faster. So the way this plant-based approach is very, very powerful for eliminating inflammatory change. So what I would say is, absolutely, we know that extra salt will be an inflammatory agent. The byproducts of sugar will produce a form of prostaglandin in the body that is pro-inflammatory. It will produce prostaglandin 2. You've got leukotrienes. You've got a number of inflammatory chemicals that will be produced by the intake of things like refined sugar, animal products, dairy products. So all of those foods have got to go. And if you eat in a plant-based manner with a lot of greens and alkaline-forming foods, that'll be one good spot. You've got to reduce trauma. If she's aggravating the joint by running, guess what? Can't run for a while. You've got to either get on an elliptical or swim or get on a bike. You change it up. You cross-train in a way where you're not creating the same damage. And one of the most powerful anti-inflammatory tools we have is water-only fasting. Nothing will reduce inflammatory change in the body as quickly as water-only fasting.
Wow.
There was a study published not long, a number of years back in the Lancet in England, where they looked at and came up with one of the most powerful anti-inflammatory procedures for dealing with rheumatoid arthritis. And typically when you have that problem, they give you a whole round of steroids. You're on cortisone, you're on different kinds of injections and very powerful drugs like prednisone, which are corticosteroids that can cause bone damage, but they're anti-inflammatory. They did find something that they found was significantly better and faster than even the use of corticosteroids, and that was a 5 to 7 day water fast. I didn't make that up. That's what the medical people did. And then they found that following that with an anti-inflammatory plant-based approach can pretty much eliminate a lot of that inflammatory change. So we treat a lot of inflammatory diseases with a good 5 to 7 day period of water fasting minimum. And that can make a big difference for helping in the recovery that she's looking for. But the real key will be to understand how much joint damage there is so that you can have a prognosis to know a little bit more effectively, do I have the leeway for really being able to heal this, or am I really dealing with bone on bone? I'm assuming in her case that they just did a knee procedure, that she probably has joint space, and probably by making some changes with nutrition and getting rid of caffeine, getting rid of all those acidic compounds, caffeine, chocolate, all of that kind of stuff, sugar, will help the body reduce that inflammatory outcome. Sleep is important. Sleep deprivation will increase inflammatory outcome. So that will be an issue. Trauma will increase that if she keeps aggravating the same joint. So there are a number of things that you can do to really help reduce the inflammation in a joint. The real key is to make sure you're not getting to the point where you got bone on bone. And now they have medical procedures where they do things like PRP, where they take which is a platelet-rich plasma, they take a sample of your own blood and then inject your own plasma cells back into your own joint. And what happens is it creates an autoimmune support for cleaning up debris and all of that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. A number of athletes use it on a regular basis. If you got bone on bone, it's not going to help as much. But sometimes it's an invasive procedure. But to me, that would be better than going on an endless round of steroids, which are so devastating to the body. But frankly, I would go with the eating plan that we do, and probably a water-only fasting approach to see how much the inflammation can be reduced.
Wow, real quick. I was just going to say, I'm so impressed about the water fasting, and I want to tell Pat, you need to book your 1 week water fast at Balance for Life in Florida and get that inflammation under control. That would be just
and hopefully I'm hoping she's eating in this way too, because that'll be a big issue.
She is, but she's also going to do a food journal to see if there's anything like, I think probably there was some surprise and shock and awe when you said chocolate with our viewers. We got some reaction to the chocolate. Like, oh, not our chocolate.
Don't take my chocolate.
I'm going to be hung by the female audience for that one.
You could be. You better run. So go ahead, Jean.
I just wanted to jump in because, one of the things we were talking about is to jump on an elliptical. And I just want to point out, if you've not seen this, I really am so amazed by this. This is called the Street Strider, and it is a bicycle that is an elliptical at the same time. It's great.
I've seen them. They're great.
They're awesome.
I know. Just absolutely amazing. And
they're fun. I think it's cool. I tell people, when it comes to activity, you got to have fun too. It's very important.
Right.
Yeah,
and that's why I like to replace the concept of exercise with activity. If you got to do something at least 4 times a week for 30 or 40 minutes. Right. So find something you like to do. If you
want to get one of those.
If you like to dance 4 times a week. If you like to swim 4 times a week. Do something that you enjoy, because if you enjoy it, you'll probably continue to do it. And if you don't, you'll stop.
So real quick, Pat has a follow-up question.
Okay, yes, Pat.
This is Pat with the arthritic knee. Is spinning a good idea or not?
Is what?
Spinning.
Bicycling.
Stationary bike.
Spinning. Here's the problem I have with spinning. In those classes, they get into such a high intensity at times where you're coming up off the bike And I find that it creates a unique set of chiropractic problems that I've been dealing with patients for many years. It puts a lot of pressure on the sacroiliac joints, and we see a lot of distortion structurally of those pelvic joints that then need follow-up care. And so when you're getting into spinning classes, if you're going to bike, just bike. And I think sometimes you get these young people that are leading these classes and you're trying to keep up, and now you're up off the bike and you're pushing against those joints in the low back and the pelvis, and it can create its own level of irritation and potential structural abnormality. And then you find yourself having to go for chiropractic treatment or osteopathic treatment. And the bottom line is, I don't mind any class. If you like to spin, spin. But be mindful that you have to be careful when the intensity starts getting ratcheted up and how you're using your body.
Yeah, I can't spin. I have a bad right knee and I had a lower back injury. And when the spin instructor says to come up out of the saddle, my right knee, I mean, it was just like, it just said no. So I can ride my bike all day, every day, but I cannot get up out of the saddle and spin and do hill climbing. It just kills
if the spinning is not hurting you and you have no structural pain or any of that, bless you. Do whatever you want to do. But if you find yourself getting injured with knee injury, pelvic injuries, low back, you got to know that it's being produced by the intensity and how you're using your body in that spin class.
Right, and that's good. And Pat said that she does not come out of the saddle, so that's good.
Okay,
so that's really good.
That's okay. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You were talking about platelet-rich plasma injection, and behind me, this is a picture from Stefan Esser.
Yes.
And I don't know if you've seen this picture or not. Have you seen this?
What is it?
This is plasma that has been spun down.
Okay,
and
all
it's
right.
from 2 different people.
And it's in the syringe.
The one with the calibration is from a vegan that, a hopefully plant-based person. And then the other one is from somebody who had an omnivore who recently had a ham and cheese sandwich just before the blood was, had been taken. You can't see the gradations.
Oh, I see. So it's in a calibrated. No, then it's definitely cloudy. So it's in a calibrated tube
Right.
too.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
Well, then for sure. Okay.
You
that's
can't
fine.
see through it.
You can't see through it.
It's bad.
Absolutely.
Not good. Not good.
No.
Yeah. Don't
No.
eat your ham and cheese sandwiches, people. Not
Just
good.
look what this is doing to your blood. I mean, this is what's
Right.
clogging you. That's the fat and cholesterol that's circulating in your
Right.
bloodstream. It's like, hello?
Please put down the ham and cheese, really.
Yeah, no kidding.
I know. I just wanted to share that with you.
No, that's
Okay.
fascinating. Thank you, Jean. So we have another question from Marion Simmons. Marion Simmons.
Okay.
Marion asks, I have started to do intermittent fasting for a couple of months.
Okay.
18-hour fast with a 6-hour feeding window, 5 days per week. On the weekend, my windows are sometimes off. It has helped me to lose weight. Will there be any negative side effects if I keep doing this? Once I do reach my goal weight, I was thinking to continue, perhaps not every day, but to keep at weight, to maintain.
Well, people like Luongo have talked about the fact that if you keep doing a window greater than 14 hours on a regular basis, sometimes there's gallbladder complications, gallstone formation. Sometimes with rapid weight loss, we can see loss of hair. We can see some of those changes. My feeling is if you're eating a really high quality diet in that window of time, I don't think there should be any major negative repercussions of that. But again, if you're seeing such a dramatic rapid weight loss after a point, you may want to look at it. But as a rule, I think that the natural cycle for eating and not eating is pretty much a 12-12 cycle where you're eating in the daytime hours and you're not eating at night. So I tell people if at least you can do that, that's a great start. Once you get to 24 or 18-6 cycles like she's doing, I haven't seen a lot of data that suggests major negativity to that. But again, if that's working for her and she feels energetic and her weight's regulated and she's performing and her energy's at a high level, I would think that it's probably doing okay for her. So that's how I would judge that and gauge that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for everyone. I think, as I said before, if you can even do a 12-12 or a 12 or a 14-10 cycle, and then the meals you're eating are whole food plant-based, I think you'll find yourself rocking and rolling, just really energetic and performing at a very high level.
That's fantastic. Jean, do you have a question?
I think you're on a roll. Go.
Okay, I am on a roll. All right, so we have this. I really like this question. This is going to be a good one. So this came from somebody who put a comment on our Facebook page. Are there any plant-based foods you should eat more of while you are an avid intermittent faster? Other than animal-based foods, what foods should you avoid during your feeding window while in weight loss mode?
Well, if your goal is weight loss, you want to still eat primarily the fruits and vegetables, not concentrated food. So if you think about what's the most calorie dense parts of the diet that we're recommending, well, you have things like nuts, you have things like avocados. So if you're in a weight loss mode, you want small amounts of those foods. No, you can eat them, but you got to watch quantity.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, fruits and vegetables are in the range of 100 to 300 calories a pound. Nuts are 2,500 calories a pound. So the bottom line is we're recommending maybe 2 to 3 ounces of those foods in any one day. And you got to be sensitive to that because they're easy to overdo, but they're great foods. I love avocado. I love nuts. And so they're a major part of my eating plan. I would say the most important foods are going to be greens and whole, and all of the vegetable material that you can lightly steam or eat raw. I think some of the whole grains and legumes and sweet potatoes, things of that nature, which are going to give you a filling up effect for very low calorie density. Things like beans and legumes, which have a very high protein to fat ratio, so their calorie density is low. Beans are like 400 calories, 300 to 400 calories a pound. So if you ate a quarter of a pound of beans, which is like a satisfying meal, you're getting all this protein and satisfaction for 100 calories.
Nothing.
So if you think about it, those are the foods you want to focus on if you're in weight loss mode, and you want to be a little less involved with foods that have higher calorie density. I would eat juicy fruit, not dried fruit, because once you concentrate the sugar density by taking water away, you're concentrating calorie density to some degree. So
I thought you meant the gum. Juicy fruit. I was like, what?
I got it. At first I was like, oh, that's one of my favorite gums. And then I was like,
what?
No, like fruits high in water.
Got it. Threw me for a minit.
So anyway, that's it. Your food you want to focus on are things like all the fruits, berries, fruits, all the greens, whole vegetables, cruciferous veggies, whole grains, legumes, lentils, beans, sweet potato, things of that nature, and smaller amounts of things like avocado, nuts, seeds, and all of that generally. And I think, and I would eat the juicy fruit rather than dried fruit. If you do those kinds of things, you're going to build in calorie protection, and then you can eat large quantities of those things without worrying about weight gain.
Exactly. That's fantastic. Well, what I am excited about with my intermittent fasting that I learned through my discovery, because I just started this about the first part of October as a real committed intermittent faster, is I found through trial and error that when I have my black beans or pinto beans or my legumes at night, either if they're lentil, it's that high fiber content, like you were saying, I don't know if the protein plays in there, but just the fact that if getting that fiber, I think it really helps me get to that 18 to 19, even 20-hour mark. And last night I just had some potato soup that my husband made this past weekend. It was delicious, but there was no legumes in it. And by 10 o'clock in the morning, I had a dull headache and I just wasn't feeling good. And I was like, there you go. I'm just a unique person, but I'm recommending to our people in our group, if you're having that hunger at about the 14, 16-hour mark and you want to go to 18, get some beans in there as your last meal.
Yeah, I think having the higher fiber legumes and grains and things of that nature are going to give you more staying power. There's no question about it. There's a little bit of a slower absorption because of the fiber content. Things will hold a little bit longer in terms of bloodstream. And I think you're going to have more of a filling up effect. When you're dealing with that combination of high fiber and water, you get a longer term filling up effect. Yeah. And that's why even at our centers, my center, I know at True North, we don't serve portion control. We put food out buffet style, so you eat as much as you want. And I tell people, eat slowly, eat mindfully, but eat until you're full. This is not about deprivation.
No.
And if
No.
you're eating that broad base of high fiber, water-rich foods and foods that have more grain and legume and potato and all that, you're going to have more of a satisfaction. You're going to have more of a filling up effect, and that's what you want.
Yeah, it's amazing when I have my first meal since I've started this fasting. But it's even before that. I have this bowl at work that it's a salad bowl, and I have a steamer at work, and I will put broccoli, cauliflower, peas, corn. Today I had all of that plus asparagus and some brown rice. And it's literally like 6 cups of food, but there's probably only maybe 250, 300 calories in there. And I'm filled up for hours and hours and hours. And it's got all the wonderful micronutrients and also kale. I had kale in there, and it's just, you feel so good after you have a big hearty meal full of all that nutrition. It worked. It just feels so good, and you don't feel bloated. There's no acid reflux, and people at work call me a horse and a goat, and and then that's okay because that's like they're in good shape too. So
those are such lovely animals, Nancy.
I know. I take it as a compliment. Thank you. So we have enough time, Dr. Sabatino, for one more question. Okay. And this is a good one too. Can intermittent fasting over a long period of time damage any vital organs?
I haven't seen any evidence that would suggest that. And even people that do water fasting on a more regular basis annually, we don't really see that. There's more likely that organ damage will occur by the standard ways that people eat rather than by taking food away. I think that generally speaking, the body needs nutrition. We're giving it the highest quality nutrition we can. If you have a period of deprivation, the system will start to try to help itself by leaning on reserves, fat reserves. But as a rule, unless you're really compromising nutritional value over a long time and pushing the body with caloric output over a long time in the face of deprivation, you're probably not going to create any major damage to anything unless there is already some underlying damage or whatever. But like we said, there is evidence sometimes where people go on extreme diets, lose a lot of weight quickly. Luongo worries about intermittent fast where there's rapid weight loss, where the gallbladder seems to get involved, maybe more gallstone formation as a rule. But I think generally...
Wouldn't that be part of the detox that's coming out from the rapid weight loss?
Yeah, sometimes. But the bottom line is there is this issue with dramatic weight loss where you can have stone formation and things like that can occur sometimes. But the bottom line is, as a rule, I think you want to balance your hunger needs with good, high-quality plant-based foods. Try not to do extreme things because it's not necessary to do extreme things, especially when you're eating the way we recommend, because that's going to build in its own protection. And if you're not hungry at a certain time, pay attention to those cues and don't eat. When you are hungry, pay attention to those cues and eat. And if you're going to create a window where you're deciding not to eat because you're trying to lose a few pounds before you get to maintenance, then just make sure the meals that you do eat are going to be full of all of that nutritious food so that in the gaps when you're not eating, the body has those nice reserves of all of that nutrition that you provided for it. And I think if you do that, you're not going to get into trouble.
I'm wondering if Longo, when he did his studies, after the fasting, were these people going back to the SAD diet?
It's not just Luongo. We have seen it before with massive detox. When you have massive weight loss that can occur, you get this period where hair can fall out. There can be some gallbladder responses. Look, it's not happening all the time. It can happen in extreme states of change. But the key is by feeding in the way we're recommending, you're going to prevent a lot of any of those potential risks and harms.
But in those studies that were done,
I don't know. I haven't seen extensive studies that he's done. I think that's an anecdotal observation. I don't think he's done a lot of gallbladder tests.
Because I'm just wondering if the people were on the SAD diet and went back to it or had been releasing all this toxin that they weren't,
Well,
eating one
typically
day.
speaking, if you're going to get a gallbladder involvement, it's going to happen with much higher fat in the diet, much higher animal fat in the diet. So that's the problem with making statements like that. You don't know what the anecdote is connected to. Because
Exactly.
you don't know what they were eating before, what they were eating after, all of that. All I can
Right.
say is for people is that you've got to get away from this animal base, and no matter what
Yes.
you decide to do, intermittent or not, you've got to move in the direction of eating this vegan, whole food, plant-based approach as much as you possibly can, because we
Absolutely.
know that's where the power of health relies and resides. It resides in that eating plan, and it emancipates you from the concepts of deprivation and extremes by realizing it's about eating well, not less.
Exactly. Dr. Sabatino, if we could, one more question. Sherry Stewart, I promised we'd ask her this, and then we got on to the ones that were from the Facebook group. She's asking, I wonder what causes stiffness as we age? Like we were talking about joint stiffness,
Well,
muscle
if you think
stiffness.
about it, there's actually a compression of tissue, there's an aging of tissue. For example, we know with age, blood vessels get a little bit more rigid. They don't have the flexibility, and when they don't absorb pressure quite as well. And so what will happen is blood pressure can go up with age because of a stiffening of those. So there's changes in proteins in the wall of vessels. Collagen is not quite as there and not quite there as much, even in your skin. A lot of times what happens is that there's a shortening and a damage. There's a loss of muscle mass. There's a shortening of tissue. That's why you'll notice bodies seem to almost compress as they get older. It almost looks like people are shrinking and folding on themselves. That's why we recommend that you spend time in your fitness approach on flexibility with age. That's why I recommend things like Tai Chi and Qigong and yoga, because what will happen is you won't have that with age. You won't have that with age. Look at the elder people like the Chinese population when they're doing Tai Chi. These are people in their 70s and 80s. They're moving with fluid and grace, and that's what happens. We buy into this idea that we have to be completely inflexible. The problem is in America, we train in a way that focuses on aerobic or sometimes strength training without the lengthening component, because things will get a little more dehydrated with age. They will get a little bit more compressed and tighter and more rigid and more damaged. And so there's wear and tear that can occur. And by working on those lengthening activities, you'll be surprised how much flexibility you can endure and maintain even in your 70s and 80s. I've been doing Tai Chi for a very long time and Qigong, and the flexibility I have is very similar to the way it was many, many, many years ago. So
That's
it doesn't have to be something that you constantly lose, but I will tell you that with age you have to work at it.
Yeah, that's
It's not going
amazing.
to happen. It's not going to happen on its own. So you got to take the time to work on balance and some lengthening and some flexibility. And if you do, you'll reap the rewards of that with less pain, more performance, all of those things.
That's
And you
important.
can do
One of the
stuff.
best things for people with age is probably dancing. Dancing may be one of the best activities for keeping your mind together cognitively and keeping your body loose, limber, and flexible. So if you don't want to do yoga and Tai Chi, go dancing, do something, but get involved in some activity that builds
Bruce.
that opening and lengthening component. Very important.
I love
Well, I think
Bruce.
I just
in the dark.
absolutely, I love seeing the elderly doing Tai Chi. My uncle, who's in his 80s, has been teaching Tai Chi up until he had a stroke because he ate standard American diet about 6 months ago. But it's still up to 81 years of age. He was
Right.
teaching Tai Chi.
That's
How
what
cool is that? That's
that's
just
what it's about, though.
amazing.
We buy into this idea that as we get older, that everything has to be sacrificed, including our own flexibility, integrity, function, and performance. And that's
Yeah.
something that the society has sold. And it's something that we see very commonly because of how people move, how people handle stress, and how they eat. All of those things are conspiring to cause inflammation and damage and lack of performance and pain and disability. I will guarantee you that when you even eat this way and live this way, you're going to have less pain. There's going to be less disability, more ability to perform at a higher level. And then if you work with just a little bit of activity that allows you to free that body up, it's amazing what you're going to experience even in your latter years.
It's
So I'm
amazing.
just telling my listeners, don't give it up, but understand that you got to make a commitment to making that one part of what you do in your activity program. You can focus on your walking. You can focus. This is what I call my triangle of fitness. I just wrote an article for the Hygiene magazine, the National Health magazine, with just this. My base is endurance aerobic. We got strength training, and then we have flexibility and lengthening. And we don't pay as much attention to that. And so we have these bodies that compress, and then you get that forward head position, and everything is that you're just moving yourself more and more into the ground with age. And there's no reason for that to happen. We want to rise up like a phoenix from the ashes of all of that discontent that we've dealt with through all these years. And we have the ability to have much more function and high level performance, even in advanced ages.
That's amazing. It's amazing.
I want to jump in because Wanda jumped in, had to put a plug in for the National Health Association. They're having an event coming up January 5th through the 9th. So if you've not seen this, please take some time and look at it, because you've got Dr. Sabatino is going to be there, Dr. Goldhammer, you've got Victoria Moran from Main Street Vegan who's going to be there. Your chefs are going to be there. It's just going to be awesome.
Yeah, let me tell you something. We have some of the best speakers and educators in the country in this field. We have incredible chefs. And I'm going to tell you, the food, because we just had the tasting for what's going to happen at this event, the dressings, the entrees, the desserts, the soups, the salads are some of the best food that I have ever tasted and prepared in a plant-based manner. This is going to be a monumental, incredible event. And people, if you got a chance, come to it. The price is right. There's still seats and reservations available. Call 800-663-9292. Speak with Jolene. She's our reservation manager. She's lovely. She'll walk you through it. And again, we have time. There's still about 2.5 weeks away. If there's any way you can fit it in your schedule, please come and play with us. It is going to be a major, wonderful event. No
Come
question.
sit on this beach. This is the beach.
There it is, right on that pier. I'll walk you out on that pier. We'll look at the ocean together.
I'm so excited. I can't wait to come down in March. I'm so thrilled. Well, on this note, Dr. Sabatino, we are going to thank you for joining us again tonight. The Starch Queens are always honored to have you. And our viewers are commenting about how grateful they are for this knowledge, information, and they appreciate your spending time with us. So very excited to have you, and thank you for coming back.
Well,
go ahead.
I'm very thankful to be on the show, and I want to thank all the viewers for listening and participating, and it's always a pleasure for me too. Thank you.
Yes, so we really appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Sabatino. Jean, I want everybody to give a thumbs up if they like Jean's background. That was absolutely fascinating, being able to see the changing of the scenes behind the scene, behind our Starch Queen of Diamonds. So that was really cool. So thanks, Jean, for showing us Deerfield Beach, Florida. Look at how gorgeous that is.
I know, and I can't wait to go sit on this beach.
I know.
That's the backyard for this event. That's right outside the front door. So come on down to the ocean and play. And happy holidays to everybody.
Happy holidays, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful, wonderful holiday. And we always are so grateful for when you join us on the Starch Queens Talking Tuesday. Good night.
Good night, John Boy.
Night, Mary Ellen. Night, Dr. Sabatino.
Good night, everybody.